Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Beyond the Present podcast. My name is Daniel Morgan, and I'm here joined live by Pouya from Canada. Hey, my man, how's it going?
Life is fantastic as always. How are you?
I am doing terrific. And guess what, guys? Do you remember that, lady who was very intelligent, had a lot of great ideas? She loves animals, and she probably is a vegetarian or maybe even a vegan, but doesn't admit it. That's right. Her name is Emmy, and she's right back here. So, Emmy, how are you doing? How's it going?
I'm doing great. I'm feeling fantastic and vegetarian as always.
That's right. Vegetarian, but not vegan.
At least on the surface. At least
that's right. That's right. We're going to figure it out at some point. We'll just I'm going to go for a confession. You're like, yes, guys, I told you. That's right. So overall, today's topic is right up your alley, Emmy, because we're going to talk about the weird attitudes that people harbor regarding the concept of modern medicine and all of the skepticism surrounding the concept. And why is it that so many people nowadays, despite all the advancement in technology, as well as all the evidence that are around us all the time, they're just trying to somehow get away from modern medicine and go back to, alternative medicine, weird types of therapy, sometimes ancient forms of therapy, despite all the evidence that are going against them. But before we go any further, let's just, wrap, because it's been a while we haven't had our episodic, shows with you, Emmy. So why don't you go us and tell us, and as well as our listeners, about the things that have happened in your life in the past few months?
So just keep everyone up to date,
That's right.
So I've just been, I just finished my first year of veterinary medicine. So I was just joking with you guys, I guess, a little bit earlier that I'm a quarter of a doctor now.
A quarter of a doctor. But here's my question right now.
It's a new terminology.
Like fields of engineering or even business or whatever. Like after about a year, you can get certain things done and you can just start working somehow. But as a doctor or like a veterinarian or these medical fields, can you guys do much after about a year, or you are still you have to do a lot of studies and research before you're ready to actually go and get stuff done?
Oh yeah, I won't be able to do anything that's even relatively comparable to a licensed doctor till probably the third year of my study. I'm working in relative fields, but as of that, I can't be doing any surgeries or treatments so it still takes some time, unfortunately, for me.
That's right. Very well. So hopefully about, 3 more years, you will be able to actually do everything right.
Yeah. Well, that's the plan.
Well, that is the plan. Very nice. So how much
given everything goes well
on your end? How was life in Toronto, Canada, by the way?
It's going good. It's getting warmer and warmer. I actually posted I found some trees blossoming, and I just posted some photos. I was like, yeah, finally, spring is here. God damn it.
Wonderful. Yeah. Fantastic. So I'm glad things are fine in Canada in general, but let's talk a little bit about what is going on in our societies around the world regarding the concept of modern medicine, and why is there so much skepticism towards this concept? And more importantly, is that from your perspective justifiable? You, Emmy, you are a veterinarian. You have, of course, a lot of great ideas about this subject, and more importantly, you are involved with a lot of forums and different, types of social groups regarding this matter. Why is there so much skepticism regarding the concept of modern medicine? Is that justifiable, or do you think that is just a modern trend?
It seems to be you hear more and more about these as time goes on. So it seems to be not just there's always a bunch of the treatment itself or the alternative therapy itself may change, but I feel just in general it seems to be that there's an increase in people wanting this, and I feel it's unfortunately partly due to how modern medicine and how the medical field is kind of set up, that there's kind of something lacking in maybe a more personal sense, or even dare I say a spiritual sense, that people are feeling they're not getting enough from their doctors or their healthcare. And so I feel kind of pushes them into these non-conformist kind of treatments. It's giving them something that obviously that actual proven science and medicine isn't giving them.
Wow, that's true. It makes complete sense. So, Pouya, yourself, are you generally skeptical towards modern medicine. Do you trust basically what is being done these days by doctors, by medical researchers? Do you yourself put a lot of trust in this, or you are perhaps one of those people who might somehow be against the whole trend, and you might even prefer to go towards alternative medicine?
No, I don't prefer alternative medicine. However, I've practiced them like a long time ago a bit, trying out different things. But no, I mean, I am a skeptic in general, not of everything.
Oh, about everything, not just medicine,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I don't mean like a paranoid skeptic. I mean, I'm hoping, and I'm sure at least most of the scientists and physicians and doctors who are out there are also skeptics, because that's how they get things done. That's the first element. But that's the healthy skepticism that we talk about, to actually develop understanding of the mechanisms of things, or how they're happening, why they're happening, what we can do about them, etc. So in that sense, yes, I am a skeptic always. But no, I do generally trust. However, we were actually talking to Em right before we started recording, that I was telling her that I understand how in some areas modern medicine has failed people to a degree, that maybe that could be one of the reasons that is causing this distrust amongst people.
Interesting. That's right. And of course, let's be honest, Anya, I want to actually move on to you here and ask you a question regarding the fact that it's proven nowadays. Like I was reading this article, and it said I think the second or third biggest cause of death in the United States right now is actually, I forgot the exact terminology, what it really meant. However, was that one of the biggest causes of death in the U.S. right now is death caused by medical malpractice or some sort of mistake done by surgeons or doctors.
I've heard that, like medical, like medical errors, or I want to say that was like because I think I've heard that statistic been thrown around too. I want to say it was actually like the third leading cause of death in the States, but
that's right.
Yeah, I feel like too.
But still, let's be honest, even the third leading cause of death. I mean, the other ones probably were like car accidents or something, or I don't know, cancer, heart attack. So this is a serious problem. I mean, you cannot blame millions of people around the world who are somehow skeptical towards the whole notion of medicine when they hear that the third cause of death is going to the hospital and just happen to be a bit unlucky and find yourself in the operating room with a surgeon that is not qualified. I mean, that's not necessarily reassuring for most patients. Let's be honest.
No, definitely. And I can understand, when you're going like, oh yeah. And I feel not even like, I guess medical malpractice, but even I guess like a lot of people are mistrusting like pharmaceuticals. So like the type of drugs, when they're like, how are like the list of side effects like worse than the actual like thing it's supposed to be helping? So I get where that's coming. Although I haven't actually looked into how they break into like what defines like medical malpractice, and like, is it kind of like, are these deaths attributing like, the person comes in like too late in the sense that like there's not much you can do, but they happen to die in the hospital, or is there actually like a direct link to the doctor being like the cause of their death? That's why I would want to.
Of course. So we cannot exactly. What you're saying is we can't exactly ascertain what is the cause of death. So maybe like it's not necessarily medical malpractice, but they happen to just get to the hospital a bit too late, right? You're saying this.
And I mean, if you're looking at, this is in the United States, so you're looking at how the healthcare is kind of set up. Like, not many people can like go in all the time to the hospital, or like, some people can't even afford like the ambulance rides, so you're kind of wondering like if they are coming to the hospital, like it must be pretty serious.
That's right.
So
like, how about like Canada, for example? Like in Canada, I'm pretty sure you guys have universal healthcare, and do we see the same trend in Canada?
I would say not as much, because I think because we do have, in the sense, we have a lot longer wait times. So you'll have people on the list for like months, like waiting for a surgery, even though it might be like a very necessary one, and that, sooner than later. But just because everyone is able to get in to be seen, that everything kind of gets clogged and backed up, and you'll have, emergency rooms, people like things are filled, and like, I remember once I went to the ER and I was just kind of like shoved into like a side room, and there's people waiting in the hallway like getting treated as well. So I guess we don't see it to the same extent, but we do also have issues.
And you see, just because I've never had this experience, basically, because you mentioned about this whole universal healthcare and how things are done in Canada. I mean, let's be honest. I think both types have some disadvantages, of course, mainly for the middle class, let's be honest. So if you are living in a country with universal healthcare, you do have a problem, and that is these waiting lines. So both sides have some difficulties. Of course, in the U.S., the fact that it's too expensive means a lot of people can't afford it. However, I think regardless of all of these things, let's be honest. Do you think yourself, I mean, you are a veterinarian and you spend basically your life studying a lot of these issues. What I want to know from your own perspective, in a matter that is not necessarily biased, because I'm pretty sure that you have done a lot of research about this matter, do you really think that we should be concerned about stepping into the hospital and just worrying about our lives? Is that a real concern? Is that a justifiable, logical concern, or do you think that's just, a result of misinformation?
I'm just trying to think. So, sorry, can you say the first part of that again? I was like,
from your perspective, we've already mentioned the difficulties here, right? So one issue, of course, is waiting in line. Whether it's in Canada, you have to wait in line and you cannot get your treatment done. If you're in the U.S., you have problem with the cost, so you might actually forget about going to the hospital, even if you have some serious pain or symptoms. But still, let's say we get into the hospital, because right now our focus is not so much on the healthcare system as a whole, because that's an entirely different subject, healthcare, Medicare, and other stuff. We're concerned about whether or not when your typical patient enters the hospital, does he have to be legitimately concerned about his or her well-being? Or do you think that's just, a result of misinformation that people are, some sort of propaganda? I mean, we earlier mentioned it before our show got started, that think of like Steve Jobs, a man that we think of to be one of the world's biggest geniuses ever, who's ever lived, and who almost perhaps changed the human, history forever. This amazing intellectual, this bright mind, somehow died at an earlier age that he had to, because he refused to take cancer treatment. But here's the question. Was he right to do so? Maybe he had a legitimate reason why he should not have actually gone to the hospital and have undergone, cancer treatment, and he just opted for alternative medicine.
Okay.
I remember that he died early. I mean, I'm just putting it out there.
I would say that for like most cases, like if you're needing to go to the hospital, that's probably the best place for you to be. Like, I think hearing about things like medical malpractice and, that it kind of sounds scary, and it sounds that like, wow, a hospital is like less safe than, being at home. But it's I feel like if you're not going to be there, then what else is there for you, really? And I think that's where these kind of therapies come to fill in the gap. Like, they try to make you feel more feel that you're doing better, and feel that you're because you're not doing nothing in the sense, but so it feels like you're doing something for your health without having to go through this more, I guess, traditional route. But I mean, I would say that still a hospital is probably, they're there to look after your health, and they're trying to give you the best possible.
Very well. I want to come back to in a moment, Emmy. Of course, I got your point. I want to get the perspective of Pouya regarding the alternative medicine. As Emmy mentioned, sometimes you just don't want to go through the hassle or just even go for surgery, so you opt for, taking some sort of weird potion made in South America somewhere in order to just somehow get rid of your inner demons or whatever it is. So what is your perspective regarding alternative medicine? I mean, if you have certain problems, do you think it's okay to go towards such approaches towards getting a treatment, or you prefer to just take the scientific typical route of just going to the hospital, getting diagnosis, and then just going through the treatment?
Yeah. So before I address that, I want to talk about that statistics, because I'm looking at a bunch of different well-known statistics out there, and none of them, even in the top 10, mention medical malpractice. They mention all sorts of things, from car accident to stroke and different diseases. However, so I would be super skeptical of where that statistic comes from and how it was collected, and the procedure by which it was collected. and interpreted, I think was very important. So I would be super skeptical of how we're looking at that. But back to your question. And look, when it comes to a problem that either you had a heart attack or you had a car accident that you need surgery, you need kidney transplant or something like that, I don't think there is any medical, not medical, what do you call it? Alternative medicine method or whatever that is out there that can help you in that instance. At least not that I even heard of.
That's right.
With all the reasonable and unreasonable things that I heard, that's not part of it. So if you're there, I cannot think of anything better to go than to going to the hospital. And we gotta also pay attention that when you look at people who are already in the hospital and you look at the people who are dying there, it's not weird that a lot of people are dying in hospitals because they're in the worst conditions they can be that they go there. It's not like we love hanging out at the hospitals. And yes, hospitals are not the best place because people who are sick are actually there. So for a healthy person, that's the worst place you want to be. So I think here
I'm not
is
sure
where
about that, buddy. Sometimes, let's just say that you just spotted a very attractive nurse over there, man. I mean, you never know what happens. Sometimes you got to go there, buddy. I'm telling you.
Yeah, well, that aside.
But I get your point. In most cases, we're not there for the nurses. In most cases, we're there because we have a problem. I get it.
Yeah. So my point is, the context matters. You got to pay attention to what situation it is. And I do. I don't. I mean, again, if it works for you in general, like if you let's say about a common cold, if you for example say, I mean, this is a thing that I know people say might be true, might be not, like some sort of spices can help you get over a common cold or not get it. If it works for you, just do it. I don't care. That's fine. But then if you're hit by a car, I would hope that you seek professional help, right? I don't want you to get hurt. So that's my take on it. It's a huge range, and you got to pay attention to the context, I think.
Fantastic. Very well. So let's go back to Emmy here. Emmy, from your perspective, do you think that seeking alternative medicine or going for, these types of approaches towards healing or treatment or whatever it is, do you think this is necessarily a good approach, or you yourself consider that to be like, I don't know, archaic?
Funny, like growing up, like my family, I always kind of called like my family kind of like hippy dippy, where.
All right.
So like I was actually exposed to a lot of this like growing up, and like I think some of it that like, on my mother's side, they still kind of believe in it, even though I'm going to medical school, like I can like in the sense I'm like, okay, I can tell you for sure that doesn't help. But I've also worked in veterinary clinics that give you that holistic, like, it was like I actually had worked for a homeopathic vet for some time. I don't know if you know what homeopathy is, but it's the idea that if you have like an illness, you treat it with an agent that gives you the same symptoms. So like if you have a fever, you get like something that is known to cause fever, but you dilute it to like a millionth, like,
oh like my goodness,
a millionth of itself in water. So there's technically like nothing in it, but I do see how some of this can be helpful in the sense that like, it makes you feel like it makes you feel good, and part of healing is that kind of like placebo effect, like feeling that it's working can actually help you in a sense. But I would say like where I draw the line of saying that it's helpful to being like, I guess like detrimental to your health is when you're avoiding like further treatment. Like if you're not getting better and there is proven ways to help your condition and you're choosing not to do that, that's when I would say I kind of oppose those types of therapies where they kind of, I guess, create more of a wedge of distrust to your like traditional medicine and dissuade people from seeking it out. I feel if they can be used kind of like in harmony, that's probably like the most ideal situation.
Interesting.
I would like to interject here something. You mentioned placebo. I want to quote, paraphrase rather, my favorite medical physician, who also has a podcast, actually, amazing podcast, Peter Attia. And he at some point he mentioned that I don't think there's any drug as effective as placebo. So I agree with you.
That's
again,
exactly
if it works,
what I want to talk, Pouya, about placebo, because honestly speaking, I mean, like, we have seen this also. I mean, it started all the way back in World War II, where the Japanese ran out of basically medical stocks, and they had nothing to offer their soldiers other than the sugar pill, and it actually worked. So, I mean, let's be honest, Emmy. I mean, you work in this field yourself. What if placebo actually, in many cases, is more effective than going to the hospital, getting a treatment, and, I don't know, getting the surgery? What if placebo really works? I mean, in most cases we have seen, I mean, we just mentioned one case, and that was Steve Jobs, but there probably are many other cases. But what if placebo really works?
I mean, I think in many cases it can work. I mean, it's been documented in pets for homeopathy, in the sense that you give a homeopathic treatment to a pet and they feel better. And that's through the placebo effect, like an indirect placebo effect of their owners feeling that the pet's going to get better. So they get more relaxed. The pets pick up on that and they start to feel better because their owners feel better. So, like, I'm not denying the placebo effect and, like, the effects it has. Like, it can be really profound. But, I mean, if you've lost an arm, you're bleeding out, like, no amount of placebo effect's gonna.
That's right.
I think there are some very clear limitations where it can only go so far and you need something else.
That's right.
That's right. Sorry. The extreme case, of course, but at the same time, like, it works, but you don't know. It works when it does, but you can't guarantee that it will. So it might not work on me, and then you're in a shithole because you're like, okay, I was counting on that shit. I thought he's gonna get the placebo and not die. Now he's dead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Pouya. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure if any form of treatment offered in basically your typical state-of-the-art medical facility is necessarily guaranteed. I mean, I don't know about this. I mean,
guaranteed in the sense that you're talking about probability. So because we know the mechanism of a lot of drugs, we expect them to a good degree, say 90% chance that it will work. With placebo, at best you got a 50-50 shot. It depends on the person, how suggestible that person is. It depends on a lot of things that are super variable amongst people, amongst situation. So it doesn't even have a constant behavior with one person. Like, if a drug works with a person like 90% of the times, it almost always gonna work 90% of the times with that person. But with placebo, you can get sometimes good chances. Again, it depends on how suggestible they are in that particular circumstance. It depends on a lot of things. So placebo is very dynamically varying in terms of its effectiveness. It's a quote unquote, I mean, for lack of better words coming to my mind, workability, whether it works or not. So placebo is not very reliable, what I'm trying to say. However, when it works, it's great.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
I was going to say, I'd like to add on, like, I think, people need to kind of remind themselves that most of, like, the treatments or pharmaceuticals that are available have been compared to a placebo effect. So most of the times, like, they're not going to be on the market unless they do, like, comparable or better than what people have with the placebo. So,
Emmy, let me just stop you right now. I'm pretty sure you know about a lot of the cases of malpractice, as well as, pure fraud among the pharmaceutical companies. I mean, just promoting a lot of, for example, their products that are not necessarily that useful, spending a lot of basically money for marketing campaigns, even literally bribing famous doctors to somehow promote their drugs. Are you necessarily sure that all the drugs that are necessarily out there, they're somehow very cool and they always do what they've promised? I mean, what about all the other stories we hear regarding the pharmaceutical industry in terms of how corrupt sometimes they can be?
Yeah, it's actually funny. I think I feel like, not funny actually. It's pretty awful. But with regards to the pharmaceutical, I was watching.
Awful and funny. I just remember Donald Trump for a second. Donald Trump and Fox. It's awful and funny. That was exactly what I thought. That's right.
But it's one of those, again, one of those like Netflix documentaries, how this one company and it's like, I'm sorry, it was from Canada, basically bought up a bunch of pharmaceuticals, just took away all their funding from their R&D and was just like, okay, let's just sell the drugs that we know that we have, like, let's up the price. And I feel like that's like, was like what got the ball rolling on like this, basically like the development of big pharma and why is this huge like evil corporation that it is now. And I won't deny that there is, cases where, there's like that kind of corruption and, kind of like fudging the data or bribing doctors to say this and that, or to like promote their drugs and they get these bonuses. But I would say that this is still maybe more so in the States than others, but I would say that this is still like an extreme end and not, I guess, like the majority of the cases and the majority of them.
And I also want to interject again with the notion that, yes, as Em mentioned, there's no doubt that there are, stuff going on in the pharmaceutical industry for sure. How big that is, how running that is it some odd outliers or is it actually super common? That can be debated, but then don't forget that with alternative medicine you get the same thing, maybe if not worse. It's not like everybody's legitimate. If there is anything called legitimate in alternative medicine, there are people who are going to use some people's gullibility, some people's leap of faith, because there's clearly a degree of leap of faith in it, in a lot of it at least. So it's comparable in that sense, if not worse. And at the same time, at least the medical industry, however shitty it is to a degree, regulated, so it has oversight. Alternative medicine has none of that. So if there is anything going on, you wouldn't even know about it. So there's that you have to address as well. It's not like if you don't hear about it, it doesn't exist.
Here, Pouya, you're saying that, yeah, of course, we got a lot of problems with the, medical field and the pharmaceutical industry and all that stuff. But guess what? Your stuff, which is the alternative medicine, is actually worse than this. So let's go for this one. So you're not.
I'm not sure if it's worse. I'm just saying
bad and worst here, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm not. That's one of the problems. That's basically what I'm saying. But I'm not saying that it's necessarily worse. I'm saying it's probably worse. That's the problem. We just don't know. So if it's worse, you don't even hear about it because it's not regulated, because nobody's monitoring it, because nobody's taking it seriously on an official level.
Well, that's right. But what if it actually works and we still don't know about it? Let's be honest. If you are not aware of something, then you can't necessarily reject or deny it. Right now, we don't know whether this stuff of alternative medicine works or not. But what if it actually does work, but the pharmaceutical industry and the billion-dollar medical field out there, they do not want, basically, all of their professionals who spent almost, close to $1 million of education just to get there to somehow quit their jobs and lose their jobs. What if it actually works, but we don't hear about it because of the monopoly of the pharmaceutical, basically, as well as medical companies? What if that's the case?
Well, for that, I think there have been research done on some of those methods that Em can tell you about it more. But before I hand it to her, I want to say if you go really far and you want to be super paranoid in that sense, be that conspiracy theorist, then you can't even believe that because, well, that would be funded by pharma. Those would be the arguments. So if somebody's going to play I'm the super skeptic, paranoid person, conspiracy theorist, I can't argue with them. I won't argue with them. That's their life. That's fine. But with the relative amount of reason that we can, putting conspiracy theory aside, I can say like there have been some studies done on some of these that Em can tell you about.
Interesting. Very well. Back to you, Emmy. So far, you heard my argument. You are a medical professional, and I'm pretty sure that you understand how much basically is currently done in your field. But what if, just what if, all of that's basically criticism regarding the medical field is real, and what if alternative medicine works, but we don't hear about it because of the media and the monopoly of pharmaceutical industry as well as the medical field as a whole? So what if it's just, what if TV series like Dr. House promote, for example, an approach, a trust in medical field when it's not really there versus, for example, a lot of other, people engaged in the field of alternative medicine who do not have the chance to make their voice heard, and they really are getting great results, but nobody knows about them.
I mean, I feel like, like considering like, I guess the current, medical field and like pharmaceutical industry, like I'm not denying that they have a lot of like their faults and there's a lot of issues with them. But I would say in terms of like the alternative medicine group, I don't think they necessarily have an issue of their voice being heard or that they're being silenced per se in the sense that we're not hearing about the positive results. Like I think there's been a lot of like, especially I think among scientists, they're like, okay, like there's this alternative one, like let's see how it works. Like let's see if it works. Like they're looking for it, but they're just not finding the answers. And unfortunately, while we hold, the pharmaceuticals and like a lot of these medical practices to that kind of standard that we need to see proof that this works, that doesn't necessarily happen as much with a lot of these alternative therapies. And I mean, the one I talked about earlier, like homeopathy, I mean, I think like right now it's like it's funny you say that like the pharmaceutical is $1 billion industry. Like homeopathy is a $1 billion industry. It's like I'm reading this now because I was actually just interested. It's projected to be like almost $20 billion industry by 2024.
Wow.
Well, I was like, they're definitely not hurting and, trying like some mom and pops trying to make a living. Like they're doing pretty well. And again, because they aren't held to the same kind of standards that they have to like prove that it works and that they have to like show that it works. Like, they just kind of make sure it's worded a certain way so that it doesn't say it cures cancer, but they say, oh, helps with like people like suffering from this and that, giving the impression that this will do more good or have more benefits than what's actually guaranteed,
Before I move on to Pouya, I want to ask you, Emmy, a question, and please answer me honestly. Have you ever yourself tried any form of alternative medicine, like in any shape or form, like any type, for any period of time, for any length of time? Have you yourself made any attempt to use any of these things?
Yeah, no.
I got you. I knew it.
No, it's you know what? It's kind of I can see where it comes from. Like I can see why people kind of buy into it. It's and then again, this is like, I was maybe like 15 when this happened. So
it's been a while, of course.
I mean, for disclaimer here, I did too. I mean, just for disclaimer here, I did too.
But I think it's
pretty funny. Like it's pretty funny that I'm supporting alternative medicine, even though I have never, ever, even once in my life used it. You guys have both used it probably multiple times and are just against the whole concept. It's pretty
weird. So here's the thing. I think this is actually interesting story to kind of like share because back then I didn't know as much, obviously, and then again I was kind of like under like in the hippy dippy household, so so in high school I was very tired.
That's copyrighted, by the way, guys. It's a trademark. That's a trademark. Go for it.
But in high school I was exhausted. Like I slept through like half my classes. I don't know how I graduated. And my mother took me to a naturopath, which is very like, I guess in the realm of homeopathy, but more like herbal supplements and all these like natural remedies to help cure most ailments. But so this lady like looks in my eyeballs and says like, you have this and this going on. You're going to take like a bunch of this, like you're going to go through like a yeast cleanse, which I was like, okay. So I did this for like months, and I was like, I had a strict diet. I took all these pills like every single day, and it was like, I couldn't have caffeine. I couldn't have wheat. I couldn't have like dairy. I couldn't have all these different kinds of meats. This is even before I was vegetarian. So I had a stricter diet than I do now. Like,
wow. And I think by weed, you mean the good type of weed, I guess, right?
Yeah, like any of the yummy.
Because I heard nowadays a lot of I'm sure you heard of like the medical marijuana and its basically usage.
Oh gosh, yes, I'm familiar with that.
And by the way, does that count as? I'm sorry, because I told you I've never used any form of alternative medicine. Does marijuana count as alternative medicine in any way?
I don't think so.
Yes, there's like a niche group that believes that marijuana can cure absolutely everything.
Wow.
Okay. Maybe it both is and isn't, but then you didn't consume it as a means to, so it doesn't count.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So what I'm getting so far is you both have tried alternative medicine and, of course, have gotten some results. But do you think that you were you yourself satisfied, Emmy, and, of course, you, Pouya, did you get the results you were after, or you did not get what you wanted?
So here's the funny thing to boot. So after all this, I felt better for like a couple months, but I think it was just because like when you do those kind of changes to your diets, like obviously I was eating like healthier in the sense, but I don't think those pills did absolutely anything. And it wasn't until like 2 years ago that I finally realized that I've been clinically anemic for almost a decade.
Wow.
No one paid, but you know what I mean? It's kind of like, here I was kind of fooled into being like, yeah, like, oh my gosh, I just have like too much, there's like a imbalance between like my microorganisms. Like if I do this cleanse, I'll like get everything back in order and everything will be better and my life, like I'll finally feel like the best me. And it's like, no, actually you just needed more iron. Like,
oh my goodness.
So it's that's where it's kind of, you kind of start, I guess I was more aware that like, yeah, I see the appeal to a lot of these therapies and I see how it kind of is sold as like the be all end all. Like this will like get rid of all your problems. You will feel your best self. But in the end, it wasn't really like compared to known medical like treatments. So like for me, iron pills, because I need to get more iron in my diet. There really wasn't a substitute.
Wow. Interesting. And you, Pouya, you got any results from your attempt?
I mean, yes and no, because no matter what you do, like if you do 1 billion stuff, I mean, that was a big number, 1,000 stuff, even by sheer chance, there's a chance that you get some results. So that's my point. I'm not totally against alternative ways to maintain yourself. And that's why I don't use alternative medicine, because it's good, because, you use herbs. Herbs are good. Are they bad? No, not necessarily. When you medicize it, use it as a medicine and then substitute it for something else, that is where I have hesitance, because I'm not too sure how that works. I'm not too sure if there's any proven results overall. And I'm not looking at subjective results, because
but let me stop you right now, just because both you and Emmy apparently you guys love herbal medicine and whatever it is, but how could you really, I mean, like, think of the modern medicine right now. I mean, how can we put so much trust in herbal medicine when there are no real researchers being done? It's just maybe my grandpa's grandpa did something and just randomly, stumble upon something. I mean, I want to ask both of you right now, like, can we rely on herbal medicine? Because to me, I don't know, it seems kind of like, I don't know, it has no scientific basis.
No, it doesn't. So that's the thing. First of all, I didn't really do herbal medicine. So what I did was actually something called, I did a bit of homeopathy, a little bit, but I also did Ayurveda, which is like some sort of Indian practice. So no, I mean, not that I know of. That's my thing. I mean, if you want to consume herb because you feel they're good for you, great, do it, whatever. It doesn't matter, because I eat apple and I don't particularly think it's good for me. I just eat it because I like it, right? So there's no harm there. I don't want to draw a line and say, oh, you can't use herbs. I'm just saying, my point is that I don't know if they are a treatment for certain diseases that you want to cure. That I don't know, and I don't think we really have the answer to them. If I were to throw a guess out there and bet my money, I would say for the most part, no, they're not a cure for many of the diseases they claim they do. Maybe it's for some of them, maybe, I don't know. But even that, I'm just hedging my bets. It's not like I know, or I don't think our medical industry or our scientists know particularly well. We, again, as Emmy mentioned, based on the little things that we've done, we see no substantial evidence that they do any good. But I mean, I guess we haven't done enough research either. But
that's right. Very well. So before I wrap up the show, I'm going to move on to Emmy, get your perspective, and also what do you know about herbal medicine and whether or not it actually is effective?
So I mean, I think first of all, I guess that part of the reason why these are so popular. So I know you're saying like there's no research being done on it, but I think that's also part of why it's so popular. Like, yeah, there's no research being done to show that it works. There's also no research being done to say that it doesn't, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of part of it. And I would say too, like to some degree, and there are some that do have like noted benefits. It's just that like, are they like more beneficial, say, than some of the other treatments? So like, for example, there is a compound that's found in cranberry. So I don't know, because you guys aren't female, so I don't know if you've ever had to worry about like, but they, you know, like old wives thing is like to drink cranberry juice so you don't get like urinary tract infections. Well, turns out there is a component in cranberries that changes the inside of your bladder wall so that it makes it harder for bacteria to adhere to it. It like interrupts the gel that they use to help stick to it. So in a sense, like it does work. And like, you know, I've had people for their dogs that they give this like concentrated supplement to their dog every day to like prevent UTIs. So there are like cases where it works, but you know, if your dog has a actual infection and it's been 2 weeks and it's like now the things traveled up to the kidneys, I wouldn't be like, yeah, just stick with the cranberry supplements.
Oh my gosh. Interesting. Very nice. Good point. So guys, we're out of time here. Let's try to wrap up today's conversation regarding all of the criticism surrounding the actual field of medicine, the scientific one, as well as the alternative one. So I will move on first to you, Pouya. After all that we talked today, what is your overall perspective and conclusion regarding the topic?
I mean, my thing is that I want everybody to maintain a healthy skepticism of everything. Again, this is how we are doing science, how we do medical science. So when a suggested paper comes out suggesting something, a mechanism, a cure, whatever, the first thing that happens is that all the other people that are not involved in that paper in the profession try to hammer it to the wall, make it not work, break it down. And that's what we call peer review, meaning that we try to break it down. If it withholds to a good degree, then we pay further attention to it. So that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And I would hope that everybody maintains that throughout their lives in whatever they do, in their alternative medicine or in their studies or whatever they do. I think that's the healthy part, and that's what I don't take anything by heart just because it sounds good or you had a subjective experience. Although that subjective experience is good, and maybe you want to repeat it, great. But then go with this a little bit of a skepticism to if you want to really figure it out. If you want to take a leap of faith, great, that's fine too. But if you really want to figure it out, you owe it to yourself to take a bit of skepticism with you into the project.
Fantastic, bravo. So, Emmy, let's hear your perspective as well as final comment regarding the topic.
So, I guess, I think I kind of have like an interesting perspective, being that like I grew up on the woo side, and then now I've like jumped into practicing on the traditional medical side. I would say that, as much as I'm telling people to not distrust the medical industry and to, go with the proven treatments, I'm also not like strictly opposed to every kind of alternative treatment or like natural remedy per se. Really what I'm looking for is, again, similar to what Pouya was saying, is like looking at it skeptically and seeing like, just because it's from big pharma, is it necessarily evil and not going to help you? Or just because it's a natural remedy, is it just like full of wooey and nothing's actually beneficial? I'm open to alternative treatments, which again, maybe not like popular, opinion among medical professionals. But again, I think it's more that if we've actually looked at it and there is something to say that this is actually helpful, then why not try it? Like, even though it's not necessarily a drug, I'm not opposed to it, you know?
Wow,
it's just
that's amazing. And you know what's actually quite interesting for me personally is that I have never tried any form of alternative medicine, but I would actually try to somehow support the notion. And you guys who have done it for years were actually bashing against it, like going back and forth. But generally speaking, I agree with both of you. I think we have to remain open-minded while simultaneously, of course, skeptic. That's a great point. And I want to thank both of you, Pouya. And, of course, Emmy, it's really great to have you back for after a while. So I want to thank both of you for being here and sharing your ideas.
Can I also thank you because you played an amazing devil's advocate because it was awesome.
That's right.
100%.
The guy who's never tried any form of alternative medicine in any shape was the one who's protecting it from the people who are officially fans, basically. All right, very nice. But overall, thank you very much to both of you. I truly enjoyed the experience and wish you guys both. I really hope you never need either alternative medicine or the typical one. I hope that you guys will live a very healthy and prosperous lifestyle. So thank you very much. And of course, I would like to thank our listeners for your patience. And yes, you heard what they said. Now, ultimately, the decision is up to you. Do you want to trust basically the medical industry, or do you want to opt for basically the alternative path? It's all your choice. However, you heard the opinions of the guests on the show. Thank you very much for your time. And basically, we will see you in our future programs with Beyond the Present podcast. My name is Daniel Mulligan, and have a good one.